Well, can you say for the next PowerPoint? Our next speaker is Serena Winchell, who is from 2009 to 2013. Serena was a JET participant who volunteered in Fukushima on the borderline of the evacuation zone. So immediately after the disaster, she took part in fundraising. She reached out to American families and communities. She wrote uplifting messages and provided donations as well. And she also volunteered in the cleanup effort when she was alive.
Hello everyone. Let me just say that in order to speak here about my experiences in front of you, I left the States hoping to get some work experience in a unique setting and ended up with the experience of a lifetime just before I moved in 30. So even now, its impact has affected everything I do. Japan seems to enter any conversation I have, and I'm pretty sure my friends and family are sick of hearing about it. I was on JET, the Japan Exchange Teaching Program from 2009, and I just got back last August. So I'm still experiencing a little reverse culture shock myself. So to better understand my reasons for staying in Japan after the March 11th earthquake and the nuclear disaster, I would like to give some background information about myself and what made me decide to go to Japan in the first place. I'm from a small town in northern Dutchess County, about an hour south of Albany, and I majored in Asian Studies and German language at St. Paul's, and it's there that I first heard about the JET program, the Japan Exchange Teaching Program. My professors had recommended it to me, so I applied in 2005 and passed on to the interview stage, but certain events occur in your life that interfere with even the best made plans, and a month before my scheduled interview, my father passed away from cancer, and so I decided to stay home and help my mother. I worked during the day while attending graduate school and studying towards a master's in TESOL, teaching English as a second language to older speakers. But I didn't give up my dream of going to Japan. It was only postponed, and in November of 2008, I applied again to JET, passed the interview, and was officially placed in a town called Shirakawa in Fukushima Prefecture. And 3 years had passed since then. So upon my acceptance to JET, I set about to packing and gathering the necessary documents, the FBI background checks, medical clearance, etc. And having studied about Japan, the name Shirakawa had rang a slight bell, but I couldn't quite place it. So I Googled it, and of course, I had studied about it in Matsuo Basho's famous collection of his trip to the north, Oguno Musuichi. So I'd like to introduce the place I was. So orientation and JET, first arrival, really gung-ho. Here is Fukushima. I like to describe it as same shape as Australia. And this is where Shirakawa is here. So it's famous for Komine Castle, a battle site during the Boshin War, Nako Park, which is the oldest public park in Japan, Dharma, which I will show you later, and ramen. So I love it for its picturesque countryside, rice paddies and mountains, but at the same time, the city center has enough shopping and entertainment to keep you from going crazy. I was very fortunate in my placement because it was exactly what I had asked for. On JET, you can request a certain prefecture. I didn't ask for any specific town or city. I just asked for rule. So I got my countryside. My arrival in Japan was a whirlwind of self-introductions, orientations, and welcome parties. There are 6 ALTs, which is our position or job name as assistant language teacher. And I was the only one to arrive in my year. and I would be living in an entirely different place from all the other ALTs. They were placed in the same apartment complex, and I was a little bit out, about 20 minutes out of the town in a small village, because they had asked for an ALT to be placed there. So the village was called Omotego, and it had been added to the city about 5 years ago, before my arrival, and had a population of about 10,000, which is about the same as my hometown. So I felt right at home. And my first memory of arrival there was driving at night towards my new home and seeing the flashing lights of a pachinko parlor. And I was like, what's that? That looks amazing. And they were asked, it's pachinko. Do you like pachinko? And I was like, the only thing I could think of was the game on The Price is Right where they go bingo or something like that. So it was quite an impression. But how was I to know that a year and a half later, the lights of that pachinko parlor would never shine again? My apartment was actually connected to the house of my landlord, kind of like a granny flat. So it was almost like a homestay. But it had everything that was necessary: separate bathroom and kitchen. Best of all, it had a 40 capacity, so I could put my legs into the floor instead of cramping them under the I became used to life in Japan quite quickly, thanks to people who supported me. I had awesome senpais, the people who were there, been there for 2 years before me. My supervisors were great. The things that they do for you when a foreigner comes to the country, they would never do here. They go with you to the bank, they go with you to get internet, and make sure that you are settled in. It would never happen here, I don't think. So I never suffered from the culture shock or the down period that they explained in the graph orientation, because I was always doing something new. There was always something new to do, and I felt like I finally had like a purpose. I was here, and I had a purpose since my father's passing. So just another. There's for me it kind of looks like a little dragon. So that's the city. A year went by, and I became the new ASL, or Area Support Leader, for my region. The ASLs are just as named. They lend a sympathetic ear to any of the other jets in the area, the ALTs, even private ones. Any troubles or concerns, we try to solve them. Hold gatherings, so people don't become too isolated, especially in the countryside. And we have, Fukushima is the third largest prefecture in the country, so there are a lot of regions to take care of. And my sector covered Henan, which is the southernmost part, right next to the Tochigi border. My year as ASL began interesting enough in the ER. A new ALT from the UK had arrived, and we had gone shopping for his things, and had left him at his apartment when I had gotten back, had undressed, gotten to my PJs, and I get this phone call. He had an accident with a backpack strap and his pocket knife. He did not have scissors, apparently. He was trying to cut something, and it slipped and cut against the bridge of his nose. And so here I am. I just became the support leader, and I'm like, what do I do? So I quickly get changed. I didn't realize my shirt was on backwards, and I go to his apartment to take him to the AR, and it was fine. He just got a couple butterfly strips, and we had some laughs, and just claimed it was the scar from gotten in a bar fight. So, but it makes a good story. But anyway, I didn't know, but it was a good start to an extraordinary year. So, a year and a half later, we had March 11th, 2011. So for what happened here, I'd like to read from my journal entry here. I remember being handed a lot of papers at Tokyo orientation, one of those dealt with how to deal with an earthquake or natural disaster emergency. I hung the main poster on the bathroom door where it could be perused at leisure. I never thought I would have to use it. March 11th, 2011 began as a normal day, except that I was looking forward to the graduation ceremonies and parties. I had a full day. Morning was spent at my hometown elementary school, where I conducted the last English classes of the year. Prizes were handed out, and letters, cards, presents were received. After the last class, I quickly cleaned up, headed to the staff room to drop off my stuff, asked permission from Kyoto Sensei to help it out, and went to the junior high school to see the graduates off for the last part of the ceremony. They kind of cheer off the graduates in a long line and hand out flowers and cards. I chatted with the other teachers, took pictures, and then returned to the elementary school to eat lunch. After lunch, classes were done, and the upper grades headed to the gym for their own graduation practice. Kocho Sensei told me I could leave, but I too had afternoon plans. I had received an invitation to a 6th grade teacher thank you party at another elementary school, so I headed there. I arrived a bit early at the school. It wasn't scheduled to start until 3 p.m., but teachers were told to wait in the staff room at 2:50. So I sat at my desk and was given coffee by one of the staff. Some still don't know that I don't like coffee. But I never say anything, so I left it to cool on the side. At 2:45 p.m., my cell phone started vibrating. I had left it on manner mode, so I thought it was an email and flipped it open to check. The message said, "Earthquake warning." It had been a while since my cell phone alarm had gone off. I could remember only one other time early on when I had first arrived in Japan. I had been driving at the time, so I hadn't noticed it at all. Anyway, I digress. I mentioned the earthquake warning to another teacher, and they replied, "You're right," just as it began. We thought it would stop soon, they usually do, but this wasn't. It didn't bother me much until folders and bookshelves started falling around us. The teachers were quick to shut off appliances and open windows and doors. I closed the laptop of fellow teachers, and then everyone huddled under their desks. After what I thought was an eternity, it stopped. We all ran outside in the chilly air, wearing our indoor shoes. I had grabbed my cell phone, but hadn't taken my coat. To make matters worse, it had started to snow. I thought about the 6th graders upstairs. Most of the students had left for home. The Kyoto teacher gave the order to bring back all the students so we could take roll call. Power was out, but my cell phone was still working in those first few moments. I received a call from my landlord's wife. They were driving with the grandkids from Sukagawa towards home, but they hadn't arrived yet and were wondering about the house. I told them I was still at school, and since we didn't know who would get home first, we agreed to call again. "Be careful," she said. After a minute or so, the rest of the school ran out of the building, and everyone lined up according to class in front of the school. Some parents who were at the school for the party wanted to take their kids home, but the teachers wanted to make sure that they had everyone first. Aftershocks continued throughout. What surprised me the most was that although some of the 1st graders were crying, the most shocked of the students seemed to be the 5th grade girls. The 1st graders stopped crying after seeing me and started asking me questions about English vocabulary. "Sensei, sensei, 猫は cat でしょ?" It was decided that the teachers would walk the children home. When they returned, we headed into the school to see what the damage was. The pool had a crack where water was leaking out. Japanese armor and flags had fallen to the floor. Some mugs had broken. The kitchen and gym were hit pretty hard, broken windows and cracks. I left for home shortly after, passing damaged roads. Water was sprouting out from a broken pipe in a local rice field. I worried that the tunnel I passed through to get home would be collapsed. It was fine, and I got home around 4:45. 2 hours had passed. I came home to find that a tornado had swept through. Broken glass had been caught by the cabinet door. One of the Japanese shoji, the sliding doors, had come off the rails. My ceiling lamp hung at an awkward angle. My games, stuffed animals, and books had fallen off the shelves. Corners were spotted with cracks here and there. The kitchen was by far the worst. Luckily, the fridge and microwaves hadn't fallen, but they stood about a foot away from the wall at a 45-degree angle from their previous position. Toothpicks littered the floor and everything had fallen into the sink. I was able to pick up most of the stuff and threw the broken glass into the unburnable bag. I had a lot of those since I hardly ever needed to use them. My landlord came in to check on me, but I told them I was okay. Their side of the house was even worse. If they had been asleep upstairs, they would have been crushed to death. power came on back on about an hour after getting home. I turned the TV to find all the stations broadcasting live, the footage of the earthquake and worse, the tsunami that arrived afterwards. I had been vaguely aware that my prefecture had nuclear power plants, but it hit me when I saw the reality of their damaged state. Everyone turned to the internet afterwards, and Facebook was kept very busy for the following days to come. Here's some damage. A lot of them dropped used. We lost water for about 3 days, and I have since learned to always keep my tub full. Luckily, my neighbors had a well, and we were able to get water there. Gasoline was a different story. Because of the damage to the roads and the threat of radiation, supplies were hard to come by. Supermarkets and convenience stores soon began rationing goods, especially eggs, milk, toilet paper, and diapers. People queued for hours outside gas station for the rationed $20 of gas. There was one tragic story of an elderly gentleman from a neighboring town dying of carbon monoxide poisoning while queuing for gas. I was ordered to stay home or wear a mask if I went outside. People stopped hanging their laundry outside. There was a fear of this invisible threat called Fukushima or radiation. Many of my fellow ALTs were scared and angry that our employer couldn't or wouldn't give us guarantees about our physical safety and job security. They gathered in one sempai's apartment and stuck together. About 15 days after the earthquake, the majority decided to leave. 2 headed to Tokyo to stay with a former host family. 1 left the country for a vacation in Korea. 1 left with their family for China. Soon there was only myself and 2 others. 1 stayed with me for a few days longer, but eventually caved into family pressure and left for Australia. The other moved in with his Japanese girlfriend and her mother to help out where he could. In other towns and cities, many left for their home countries or went on early spring break, including both of our prefectural advisors. I decided early on, within a day or 2 after the quake, to stay. I don't think I really considered leaving a priority for many reasons, which I will state in a moment. Because we decided to stay, my employer ordered myself and the other ALT to stay home, even though we offered numerous times to help. Every day they called to check on me or stopped by to drop off goodies like instant ramen or snacks. Each time I asked if there was anything I could do. Finally, I realized that by staying home, I lessened their worry so that they could concentrate on their jobs. To them, we were still guests, and their responsibility if anything should happen to us. This didn't mean that I was satisfied with just sitting at my kotatsu watching the news. The death tolls rose and more problems with the nuclear power plants, or even hearing those cutesy commercials of Itadaki Naus or Sayonara Lion over and over again. I thought about it. Was there anything I could do? The first few days after were hectic with everyone trying to keep in touch. Cell phones were hit or miss, but the internet worked and it was a lifesaver. It was the one time I was truly grateful for Facebook. Most of my time was spent in front of that screen, contacting people, letting our PAs know about their whereabouts. Our prefectural advisors in Fukushima had evacuated to Taiwan and New Zealand. After cell phone companies gave our area priority, I started receiving phone calls from other ALTs myself. As one of the ASLs, my contact info was listed on the website, and I received inquiries for help about transportation out of Fukushima, mainly the airport. Many have asked about my reasons for staying, and there were many. I was often asked, "Aren't your mom and dad worried?" I always politely explained that my mother trusted my judgment on the matter, and if I felt safe, then she would do what she could to support me. Facebook was a great tool at the time, but it did provide one unpleasant thing. A huge debate between those who stayed and those who left was fought rather furiously online behind the shield that is cyberspace. I'm sure everyone had mixed feelings about the matter. I know I did. Those who left most likely felt defensive, while those who had remained possessed a sense of self-righteousness. I didn't take part in the debate, but read both sides and read between the lines and came to only one conclusion. In such a situation, there are many circumstances influencing us. Knowing this, no one can make such a decision except yourself. And there's no right or wrong, no black or white. We can only respect it. Many felt pressure from family members to return home. My friends and family also strongly encouraged me to come home, but they also supported my reasons for staying. I would like to share those reasons with you now. So, in order of least to raised. It's one of those stories that will enter history textbooks. Something to tell the grandkids. I was there. I also researched, I'm not a science major and it's not my forte, but I researched what I could from scientific websites. The American Embassy had given us an 80-kilometer, 50-mile evacuation radius and instructed us to follow the local government policy, whatever the Japanese government told us to do. No one had died, and from what I had found out about the radiation or the threat of radiation, who knows what happens in life? We're more likely to die from a car accident than something that we can't control. I was raised with a strong work ethic. After my father retired, my mother worked 3 to 5 different part-time jobs, mostly on the graveyard shift, and she would never complain. I had made a promise, a contract with the local Board of Education, and unless they chose to cancel it, I would abide by it. I also felt a strong responsibility as an educator and as ASL. As an ALT in Japan, we are usually the only contact Japanese might have with a foreigner, and this one foreigner automatically becomes the representative of their country. In 1.5 years, I have become integrated into my small rural community, and they knew more about me than I did about them. Who could lead these cute faces? My number one reason. The Nakane family. They are my family. It's not easy to live abroad, especially in a country where the culture and language are so different. From the start, my landlord and his family were my support and go-to for any problems. From arrival until departure, I never once felt like an intruder in any way. I was invited to birthday parties, birth ceremonies, coming-of-age ceremonies, outings. When my friends came to visit, they treated them like family. So I'll introduce them a little bit. On top here, this is Jenny. She is their second daughter, and the twins are hers. I still can't tell them apart. So she usually, I have to. The personalities are different, but I still have trouble. This is my Japanese dad, Shizuka. He is an amateur photographer, and a lot of these photos are his. This is Aneda. I love her name. It's written with the kanji for wings and sound of wings. And she is the daughter of their elder daughter, the daughter of their elder daughter, Asami. So I was there for Chimi's birth of her first daughter. And this is her, she just had her Chichiko-san last November. And here, this is Miwako. She's my mother. She's the most un-Japanese-like lady I've met since in my experience. As soon as I arrived, she was all hugs. And in Japan, they don't really hug. They kind of have that personal space. And right away, hugs. I was like, it was awesome. And this is their elder daughter and her family. We went on tours together. I've been to everywhere in Tohoku. We went on the Sanzai Matsuri tour and got to see it. Again, when my friends came to visit, they went all out and treated us to like all kinds of stuff. and every year they make homemade miso. And I gather up all the local AOTs and we just have a great time making a year's worth of miso. The next months that followed were very surreal. I kept busy by contacting my schools at home, asking for uplifting messages from my elementary students whose somber faces at graduation had saddened me. The reply was more than I expected, including school districts I had not contacted. Don't underestimate a teacher's connections. Even my former ESL students had written letters. As fellow English language learners, they felt a connection with my EFL students, one even experiencing their own earthquake in Mexico City. I would later on use these letters in my junior high classes. My family was also a great help during this time. Once upon accepting my decision, they shipped over needed supplies like underwear and socks for the evacuation centers and diapers for my landlord's grandkids. Though not much, I donated my year-and-a-half collection of Lala, Nakayoshi, and Ribbon comic magazines to the local evacuation center. I was told the children attacked the pile, even the boys. Looking back, I know I was being sheltered by my DOE, but tried to do what I could without getting in the way. Just before school began, I was allowed to help clean up the after-school or judo club's room. Located under my English classroom, this section of the school suffered the worst damage, actually detaching from the rest of the building. So you can see here where it actually, there's a gap here, and you look all the way down and see the dirt. Just before school began, Afterwards, I helped reshelve books in the local library and helped clean out the archives behind Village Hall. I stayed after working hours helping the main office with contacting those who had left, translating documents, and answering questions. Most were returning, but we did lose 2 of our teachers. They had both been new that year, so it was understandable. They didn't have the bonds, the connections with the community yet. But everyone else returned in April or May. One that left, she was an Australian that caved under family pressure. She really wanted to stay. But she did come back with her mother, and they did a last tour of the cherry blossom season and helped her pack up her stuff. The other girl never came back after leaving for Korea and constantly asked about when her stuff would be shipped. I have to admit, I did not keep in touch with her afterwards, but like I did with the others. By April, the new school term had begun, and it was business as usual, except for a few slight differences. A new position was created in the schools. That person was responsible for checking the levels of radiation in the produce used for school lunch. A solar-powered radiation detector was placed in front of every school and government building. Students were required to wear small detectors for a given time period, after which they were collected and the data analyzed. A meeting was held to decide whether or not to hold the outdoor sports festivals at school. Some schools decided to cancel it. Others made it a half day, and blue tarps covered the ground where required. So these are some of the replies to the letters that schools over here sent. You can get a sense of how they were feeling mentally. The last line from Amina Sato says, if Japan is restored, please come and visit. Please come. So it was during this time that I took action to help, with the help of some other ALTs in the area. An ALT senpai in a nearby town had designed a new t-shirt and decided to use them as a fundraiser for the victims of the disaster. I took an order sheet to all 9 of my elementary schools and both the town offices. Many teachers were happy to order 1 or 2 or 5 and talked about wearing them on sports day. I sold over 100 t-shirts and shirt sales managed to raise 1 million yen by August. The money collected from April until August 2011 went to the Fukushima Prefecture Disasters Countermeasures Office. The money was distributed to the people who were affected by the tsunami nuclear power plant incident. We were informed that the money would not be used for infrastructure, but given to the residents in the heavily affected areas on the coast who had been displaced since March 11th. And the fundraiser does continue until this day under a new group, and I just brought a couple of shirts to show you. It says, I'm Akabeko Fukushima, and Akabe is a mascot of the Aizu region, which is very famous to Fukushima. And Akabeko is dialect in that region for red cow, so he's a red cow. And very much beloved by all the Fukushima Jets. So I will give you the website afterwards if you'd like to purchase one. They do, I believe, ship internationally, and it has expanded since the beginning. So it's not just t-shirts, they also have sweatshirts. So, during that summer, a little bit more of the history happening now. We got to meet Vice President Biden. And because we lost 2 of our jets to the tsunami north of the Miyagi and Miyagi prefectures, he was very sympathetic. So we did what we could locally. I wasn't at first allowed to go to the other areas that were mostly affected by the tsunami, and I'm a bit introverted myself, so I wanted to just focus on local stuff. So the local jets, we all ran in marathons for fundraisers. Did a lot of face painting for all the festivals, both in Fukushima and local, and Omotego, and some school festivals as well. They asked me if I was coming back after leaving just for the face painting festival. I really wanted to. So here's the top part. I was in Fukushima at an international festival, and this one is the school. And after people heard that we stayed, and so I was contacted by a local group who just wanted to meet me and spend meeting me. It was an English conversation club, and afterwards they kind of asked if I would be a teacher for them, and so I agreed, and we did so many things together, and they're a wonderful group of people. So this is the group that's taken over the sale of the t-shirts. The group of Fujets created an MBO called Ice for Fukushima. They took over the sales of the t-shirts after August 2011. Their mission statement, Ice for Fukushima E4F, aims to promote grassroots internationalization in Fukushima Prefecture with devotion to improving the lives of people affected by the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami disaster through events and fundraising. Eyes for Fukushima seeks to foster ties between Japanese citizens and JET participants at the person-to-person level with a focus on events and charities that benefit children. They work closely with the staff of Ayers-Gaskuen, an orphanage in Fukushima City, to bring multicultural events to the children there. Groups of JETs head over to face paint, play games, and just chat with the children. Recently, they raised money and built a new playground in Shichimachi. And here, this was a concert that we held just last year, and like I said, I'm not really good with speaking and performing in front of others, but I was kind of were both dragged into this little group here where we performed a couple songs for a charity concert by Girl, I think, and they thought it was Japanese, it was great. And we raised a lot of money, which went to another charity that was mentioned in just a second. I don't know how many times I was thanked for staying by the people around me. Many told me that if the situation had been reversed, they would have been the first ones on the plane home. I gave them my reasons. Perhaps it was because I did have that option of leaving any time that I did not feel as threatened. But I had decided to stay to make this my home, and home it was for the next 2.5 years afterwards. In that time, I did what I could as a fellow human being, along with many, many others who contributed even more. I focused mostly on my small community, helping at local festivals, face painting, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas parties, and volunteering at 2 different orphanages. Just this past year, I locked up my insecurities and innate shyness and performed in the Fukushima charity concert at Club Neo in Fukushima City, the proceeds of which went to On the Road, a decontamination charity. About a month before leaving Japan, I was asked by the sports section of City Hall to help them translate a contract with the country of Qatar. They were receiving a grant from Qatar to be used to build a new athletic facility, and communication was done all in English. After assisting with the initial contracts and thank you letters, I was officially asked by the mayor to stay on as translator and interpreter for this project, but due to family circumstances and the fact that I had already shipped the majority of my belongings home, I couldn't accept. But it's projects like these that really rebuild Fukushima's future. What needs to be done now, other than the cleanup and repair of the nuclear power plants, is to make more people aware of what is really going on based on scientific fact and research, and not just sensationalistic reporting. I'm also seriously considering returning there this year, at least to visit, but would like to live and work with the people there again. And so, it is with this wish that many people will come and visit Fukushima for themselves and see not just the beautiful land, but meet an extraordinary party people that I would like to make a contract. This is Garba, which is the design on the face is very is unique only to the city of Shirakawa. And every year they hold a huge festival, just this past February 11th, where many people come and they just sell them. You can bargain. So what you do here is if you have a wish or a goal, you make a promise with on here and color in one eye, and when he grants that wish, you fill in the other eye. So I want to make a contract with Dogma-san here, made in Shirakawa, that people both within Japan and throughout the world view Fukushima with an open mind and an open heart and come visit, support tourism and local businesses, and instead of just saying down with nuclear power, actually do something proactive for the people of Fukushima. The kanji on the back of Dogma-san says family safety. So I'm asking Mr. Dogma to protect and support my Fukushima family, my second home.